The courtroom was quiet, and for the first time in years, Kody Brown's wide, confident smile was replaced. The silence was near torturous. Even the air seemed weighed down, as if the whole room were holding its breath. Sunlight strained to break through the thin windows, casting long shadows on the shining wooden floor. Old books and furniture polish hung in the air, blending with the subtle trace of coffee wafting from the reporter's corner. Cameras stretched along the rear wall, their lenses fixed with unblinking stares, poised to catch every flicker of emotion. Reporters leaned forward in their chairs, pens at the ready, while mutterings swelled through the gallery like an agitated tide. Sister Wives fans had filled every seat, many holding homemade signs, some supporting, others biting with judgment. This was not a reunion show. This was not TLC's edited scripting. This was reality. Kody Brown, the man who previously stood before America with the smiling face of plural marriage, now sat at the defense table. His stance was incorrect. Shoulders slumped, back rigid. His hands, normally gesturing with rehearsed charm, now shook a little, lying on the weathered top of the defense table. The gold wedding ring on his hand glinted, but it did not shine. He looked over at the big wooden doors in the rear of the room, wishing someone would walk through and turn it all around. But nobody did. Across the aisle from him, the women he had once referred to as his wives sat shoulder to shoulder: Christine, Janelle, and Meri, three women who had once celebrated holidays, supper tables, and tears together, were together now in a manner no one had witnessed in years. Their faces were hewn from stone, eyes cold and unyielding. Christine was seated in the center, her hands tightly folded in her lap, knuckles white, her lips compressed to a thin line, but the slight glimmer in her eyes belied the tempest raging within. Steadfast as ever, Janelle held her chin aloft, eyes fixed on the judge's bench, not daring even a glance at Kody. Meri sat to the end, her jaw clenched, each muscle in her face rigid, but the taut way she held the edge of her seat betrayed her. A few seats over was Robyn. Her presence was hushed, ghostly. She held a torn family photograph, the edges curled and frayed. The photo was old, one of those big, cheesy holiday photos they had taken when things were still presented to the camera as perfect. The tear cut directly through Kody's face, her fingers touching the paper, as if attempting to hold it together at all. She did not look at him. Not even once. The low thrum of murmurs burst for an instant. Shock, curiosity, and morbid interest. After all, no one ever imagined that it would go this far. Kody Brown, in a courtroom, going up against not only the legal system, but the very people who used to be his family. The bailiff moved forward, his voice slicing through the din like a knife. All rise. With every groan of the benches, every footstep echoing through the quiet, the judge, a tall silver-haired woman with piercing eyes, came in and sat behind the bench. Her black robe swirled around her as she sat, her eyes scanning the room as if she could look right into the soul of each person there. "Please sit down," she replied, her tone soothing but underpinned with a gravity that immediately demanded respect. As the room quieted, Kody's gaze glanced up toward the gallery once more. He saw faces he knew, some of his older kids, their faces wary, a few close friends from Flagstaff, and standing behind them strangers who had lived every turn and twist of his life on the screen. For years he had had his way with the narrative. On television, in interviews, in public appearances, he got to choose what the world saw. But now, every word, every glance, every misstep would be captured as fact. The clerk rose to his feet and started reading the official charges. Each one fell in the air like the sound of hammer blows. Neglect, emotional abandonment, financial malfeasance in the family trust, terms that seemed clinical on paper, but in the hearts of those around the room, they were open sores that had never closed. Kody moved uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw clenching with every allegation. He wanted to say something, to set the record straight, to tell them that it wasn't so cut and dried as it was coming across. But his lawyer put a firm hand on his shoulder, a silent admonishment to remain silent. Christine never looked away from him. She did not blink. She did not waver. Janelle also kept her eyes straight ahead of her, her breathing slow and deliberate. Meri looked his direction once, for an instant, and the expression she wore was impossible to read. An overlap of pain, shock, and something hard. And then there was Robyn. She slumped with her head slightly down, shoulders hunched in, the torn photo still clutched in her hand. She stroked the tear in the picture at one point with her thumb, her lips opening like she was going to speak. But she remained silent. The judge's voice interrupted the thick silence. This court will hear the case of Brown v. Brown. At all, each party will have the opportunity to share their position. This is not about television or entertainment. This is a court proceeding. Her gaze settled on Kody. Mr. Brown, I will remind you that this is not a stage for performance. This is a court of law. The remark hurt, not because it was biting, but because it suggested something that everyone was aware of. Kody had spent his life as if he were always on stage. And now the lights were out on the stage. A news reporter's pen moved rapidly across a pad of paper. In the back of the room, a camera flashed. Kody stiffened, inhaling deeply. He sensed a ton of eyes upon him. In the courtroom and out, social media would already be aflame. His name would be trending during the recess. Every sigh, every frown, every look would be picked apart, debated and dissected. He considered the years that had come and gone, the laughter that once filled their collective house, the birthday craziness with too many children to number, the moments that left him feeling like their kooky family was strong enough to endure for all time. But all time was over. And he was here. The bailiff stepped to the middle of the room, readying the first witness. Kody's lawyer nudged him forward, and a soft word was whispered in his ear. But Kody hardly heard it. His eyes were on the women sitting on the other side of the room. The women who had trusted him, loved him and shared their life with him. He asked himself if any of them still remembered the man he had once been, or if there was now only the man in this courtroom, soon to be dismantled piece by piece. His judge pushed her glasses up her nose, examining her notes before finally looking up. "We will proceed," she said sternly. "Call your first witness." The atmosphere changed. The burden in the room became more oppressive. And with that, the trial of Kody Brown commenced. First to take the stand was Christine. The bailiff escorted her to the witness stand, the click of her heels on the hardwood floor ringing out in the quiet. She laid her right hand on the Bible, took the oath, and sat down, her spine straight but her hand shaking slightly in her lap. She seemed serene from the gallery. Closer, her eyes spoke of another tale, red around the edges, suppressing years of dried-up tears. The prosecutor advanced. "Mrs. Christine Brown," he started softly, "are you able to explain to the court what you think brought us here today?" Christine breathed deeply, exchanged a quick glance with Kody and then averted her gaze. "It wasn't one fight," she started, speaking quietly but assuredly. "It wasn't one moment. It was years of moments. Years of him putting himself first, over the family." Her words hung in the courtroom like pieces of glass. She told about the dinners, where Kody would sit with only Robyn's children, the evenings when he said he was too busy to be with the other children of his, the birthday parties when he never appeared. She spoke about the turning point, the day that the man she married was no longer her husband, but a stranger who lived in another wife's home. Her voice then cracked. "And when Garrison died, when we lost him," she hesitated, covering her mouth. The room fell silent, as if time had frozen. Even the court stenographer's fingers froze in midair, waiting. Christine persisted. "I needed my husband. Our children needed their father. But he didn't come to us. He didn't even call me that evening. I heard it from someone else. And when he finally arrived, it was like he was only there because he had to be, not because he wanted to be." A stifled sob echoed from somewhere in the gallery. Christine's eyes shone, but she did not wipe them away. She wanted Kody to notice them. The prosecutor nodded. No further questions. The judge faced the defense. "Kody, do you wish to cross-examine?" His attorney leaned forward, but Kody shook his head very slightly. His jaw was clenched, lips tightly compressed. Christine sat down, and the next name was announced. Janelle rose from her seat, her expression steady, almost unreadable. Where Christine's testimony had been laced with emotion, Janelle's was cold, sharp, a blade instead of an open wound. She swore the oath and sat, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Mrs. Janelle Brown, the prosecutor began. You've been part of this family for decades. What was your experience? Janelle's eyes locked on Kody. My experience, she replied slowly, was holding down 2 jobs to feed my kids, while he was spending money on things that would make him look good in front of the cameras. My experience was sitting home by myself, with ill children, because he was busy with Robyn. My experience was seeing my kids wear hand-me-down shoes, while he purchased new vehicles. Her voice did not rise. It did not crack. That made it worse. Folks believe that poverty is just being broke. But in my home, it was also not having a father present when we needed him to be there. The prosecutor requested she clarify and she did, systematically, each illustration, like a nail driven home, into the case against him. She didn't weep, she didn't stumble. When she finished, the room was more silent than it had been previously. Then arrived Meri. If Christine was heartbreak and Janelle was anger, Meri was something different, weariness. Years spent waiting for things to shift had eroded her into something fragile. She swore under her breath, sat down, and for a long time simply gazed at the microphone in front of her. Meri, the prosecutor said softly, what do you want this court to know? She let out a slow breath. That I attempted, she replied. I attempted to repair it. I attempted to communicate with him. I explained I felt invisible. I explained the children felt abandoned. And each time he assured me I was being too sensitive, that I was being too emotional, that I needed to adjust my attitude. She shook her head, a wry, humorless smile playing on her lips. And so I adapted. I adapted to being by myself. I adapted to not having a spouse. I adapted to learning about my husband's life, from the television screen rather than from him. When she looked up, her eyes met Kody's for the first time that day. So you want to know what actually broke this family apart? It wasn't favoritism. It was the moment we all realized we were fighting for a man who wasn't fighting for us. A murmur ran through the gallery. Even the judge's face relaxed a little. Meri returned to her seat. Christine, Janelle, and Meri sat down, their testimonies lingering in the air, like the scent of smoke after a fire. Kody shifted uncomfortably, his hands drumming on the table. His attorney jotted down notes. But Kody wasn't reading the paper. He stared directly in front of him, at nothing specific, because the 3 people who had known him better than anybody else had just painted a picture of a man he didn't want to believe that he was. And the day was far from finished. The bailiff called her name, Mrs. Robyn Brown. For an instant she did not budge. It seemed her body fought against rising to her feet, as if a part of her wanted the moment to pass her by. If she remained seated, everyone's attention was already upon her. However, gradually she stood from her chair, holding on to that ripped family photo, as if it were the sole source of her cohesion. Her heels clicked softly, uncertainly on the floor as she moved to the stand. The air thickened with each step she took. She took the oath in a voice that was barely above a whisper, almost too quiet. She then sat down. Close up, the picture in her hand was more than torn. It was folded, watermarked, as though it had been touched too many times, and wept over more than once. The prosecutor moved carefully, his voice gentler than with the other wives. Mrs. Brown, you've been called the favorite wife, the one Kody spent most of his time with. A lot of people view you as the cause of why the family broke up. What's your truth? Robyn glanced over at Kody. The expression wasn't defiant. It was complicated. She breathed a shaky breath, flattening the photo against her knees. When I married Kody, she started slowly. I believed in him. I believed in all that he said to me. That this family was different. That we were stronger than the world thought we were. He said we were building something forever. She paused on the word forever. She swallowed hard before going on. I didn't become the favorite. I didn't want to steal him away from someone else. But I saw it happen. I saw how he stared at me differently, how he made excuses not to spend time with them. At first, I figured it was just a phase, that we'd work through it. But, she shook her head slowly, her tears glazing over. It just got worse and worse. The silence in the room was so complete that even the faint touch of her fingertips on the ripped edge of the photo sounded loud. Robyn's voice sank lower. They hated me because I believed him, because I stood up for him, when perhaps I should not have. I said I was protecting the family, but perhaps I was shielding him from reality. Gasps murmured through the gallery. The prosecutor inched forward. And what truth is that, Mrs. Brown? She raised her eyes to his. That he wasn't attempting to keep us together anymore. That somewhere along the way, he lost being a husband to all of us. And began to be a husband to only me, and I allowed him. Her eyes filled up to the point where the tears overflowed, running down her cheeks. I thought I was gaining his love, but I was aiding him in killing the rest of them. In the front row, Christine's eyes scrunched up. Janelle inclined her head ever so slightly, and Meri's face didn't alter, but her hands clenched tighter on each other. The prosecutor's tone was soothing. Mrs. Brown, do you still stand with your husband? Robyn paused. Her lip quivered. She looked at Kody once more. He was leaning forward in his chair, his eyes wide and pleading. When she spoke, her words were barely audible. I don't know if I can. A low gasp swept the room. Even the judge's eyebrows rose a little. Robyn stared down at the photo in her lap, tracing the tear one last time. I arrived here today believing I would stand up for him. But when I heard what they said, and when I remembered what I've witnessed, I can't lie. Not to them, not to myself. The prosecutor nodded and retreated. No further questions. The defense attorney rose, obviously conflicted between defending his client and preventing a scene that could blow back on him. Mrs. Brown, he ventured slowly. You're saying you think Mr. Brown is guilty of the charges presented here today? Robyn's breathing grew raspy. She rubbed at her eyes, then stared directly at Kody, the man she had defended for so long, the man she had chosen over the others. I'm saying I don't know who he is anymore. The defense attorney's eyes locked on Robyn's face for a heartbeat. Then he quietly murmured, no more questions. Robyn stood up from the stand, her pace slower now. She walked by Kody without looking at him, took her seat, and slipped the ripped photo into her purse. Kody stood gawking after her, his mouth hanging open. For the first time that day, he appeared frightened, because if even Robyn was backing off, then there might be nobody left to stand with him. The judge cleared her throat. Mr. Brown, the court will now hear from you. Everyone's gaze followed the defendant to his table. For a moment Kody remained still. His fingers drummed a staccato beat on the wood, his eyes frozen on a knot in the surface of the table, as if expecting it to yawn open and engulf him. At last he stood, his suit, which had been freshly pressed, now draped loosely on him, compared to that morning. His world-famous mane of hair that audiences used to identify as being full of confidence and charisma, now hung a little limp, strands sticking to the perspiration at his temples. He walked up to the witness stand, every step stiff, mechanical, as if he was wading through molasses. The oath was read. He swore it in a low, gravelly tone, then sat down. For a moment, he said nothing, just looked out across the courtroom, at the judge, the jury, the rows of onlookers. Then, inevitably, at the women who had once been his entire world. Christine's gaze was unflinching. Janelle's was unreadable. Meri's was cold, almost indifferent. Robyn's, the one he'd been counting on, was elsewhere altogether. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled, but it was loud enough for someone to hear. Did you think that I wanted this? He demanded, sweeping the room with his eyes. Did you think I woke up one morning and thought, I'm going to destroy my family? No, that's not what it was. He hunched forward, his fingers wrapping around the edges of the stand, as if it were the sole thing holding him together. I gave everything I could to this family, everything. I worked to feed 18 children. I attempted to be a husband to 4 women. Do you have any idea what that does to a man? Do you? There was a silence. Not because anyone would respond, but because his voice had risen, on the verge of cracking. I made mistakes, he admitted. But I was trying to lead. I was trying to keep us safe from the world.
I was trying to ensure the family stayed alive, even if that meant making decisions that stung in the process. From the gallery, a slight cough silenced the atmosphere. Somewhere, a camera shutter went off. Kody's gaze jumped to Christine. You say I left you? That I wasn't available for the kids? I was there more than you know even. I was dealing with so much. Travel, work, money, keeping everybody above water. But you all keep working with me. You quit trusting me, and I didn't know how to make it better. Christine's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Kody faced Janelle. Money? You talk about it like I was out there spending money on gold watches, and you were struggling. You have any idea the number of deals I made to put food on the table? You have any idea the number of nights I spent on the phone? The number of late nights stressing about how to make it work? Janelle nodded her head a little bit, but remained quiet, her gaze icy. Then, at last, Kody's attention turned to Meri. You were my first wife. You knew me before any of them even did. And yet, you treated me as if I suddenly stopped loving you. That's not what happened. I was trying to juggle everyone's needs. And I may have gotten yours wrong. But that doesn't mean I didn't care. Meri didn't stir. His voice started to weaken. You all think I didn't miss Garrison. That I didn't care. But you're mistaken. His voice cracked completely now. I lost my son too. I think about him every day. I rehash that night in my mind, wondering what I might have done differently. And I despise myself for not understanding how bad things really were for him. The words hung there. He tightened his hold on the lip of the stand, knuckles shining white. Perhaps I wasn't perfect. Perhaps I failed more often than I succeeded. But all I ever did, I did because I believed it was best for this family. I didn't know how to keep us together otherwise. For a second it sounded as if he thought he could still win them back. That perhaps, in some way, his words might erase years of harm. Then Christine's voice, steady but low, broke through the silence. You didn't lose us just now, Kody. You lost us a long time ago. You just didn't realize. It was as if the air had been drawn from the room. Kody's shoulders sagged, his fists relaxing on the stand. For the first time that morning, he didn't appear angry, or defensive, or arrogant. He appeared small. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Brown, is there something else you would like to say? He swallowed hard, but the spark of anger in his eyes had faded. No, Your Honor. He stood, going back to his chair. But this time it was slower. He no longer resembled a man standing up for his honor. He resembled a man waiting for the blow he could not help but know was coming. The jury filed back in. Every creak of the wooden benches echoed like a drumbeat in the tense courtroom. You could see the exhaustion on their faces, the weight of every story, every tear, every lie they had listened to over the past weeks. Kody sat rigidly, holding on to the side of the table, so hard his knuckles had turned white. He did not glance at Christine. He did not glance at Janelle or Meri, and he still could not glance at Robyn, perhaps because her face spoke to him more than any verdict ever might. The judge's voice was even but held a hint of finality. Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict? The foreperson stood up. We have, Your Honor. There was a deafening silence. Christine ground her jaw. Janelle crossed her arms over her body tightly. Meri was gazing straight ahead, tears in her eyes. Robyn stared down at the torn family photo in her lap, her thumb running along the jagged edge. The foreperson slowly unfolded the paper, its crinkling a thunder in the air. In the case of Kody Brown, she paused to take a breath. We find the defendant guilty. Gasps cut through the crowd. Flashbulbs snapped like lightning. Christine's eyes opened wide, not with happiness, but with the weighty satisfaction of one who had finally been understood. Janelle breathed a slow, trembling exhalation. Meri shut her eyes for an instant, as if letting go of years of pain. Kody sat still, as though the words had drained him of all energy. His lips parted slightly, but nothing emerged. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, the man who had based his image on control and dominance appeared completely helpless. The gavel of the judge cracked on the wood. Order in the court. The disturbance subsided, but the tension still hung in the air like smoke. Mr. Brown, you will be remanded into custody immediately. Two bailiffs walked toward him. They put their hands on Kody's shoulders. And Robyn finally looked up. Her gaze met his. Not with love. Not even with anger. But with a hollow, deep disappointment. It was the look of somebody who had once believed in him, and now saw nothing worth preserving. Kody parted his lips, as if to say something. But the words would not come. He was carried off silently, his form receding with every step, until he was swallowed up behind the massive doors. The judge recessed the court, and only gradually did people rise and exit. Christine remained seated, fixed on the vacant defendant's chair. Janelle placed her hand on her arm. A light pressure. "It's over," she breathed. But Christine shook her head. "No, it's never really over. We just finally closed the book." Meri stood silently next to them, glancing at Robyn, still clutching the tattered family picture. For an instant their gazes met. Nothing was said, only a mutual knowledge that nothing could ever make what occurred here a thing of the past. Outdoors, journalists mobbed the courthouse steps, their voices calling out for remarks, their cameras snapping every tremble of emotion. Christine, Janelle, and Meri emerged together, the most unlikely of friends, united by a reality they had struggled to be heard. And somewhere out in the distance, past the cacophony, past the pandemonium, the sounds of the gavel still remained, a reminder that even the strongest among us can fall, and that sometimes justice doesn't repair the hurts. It simply cauterizes the wounds.